Welcome to another Telltale Books video. This video is going up on YouTube on the anniversary of the birth of Eric Frank Russell, who was born on January 6th, 1905, and he died on February 28th, 1978. Along the way, he left us with a lot of great science fiction stories. His first story is what I want to talk about here. The Saga of Pelican West, which was published in the February 1937 issue of Astounding Stories. This was still the F. Orland Tremaine edited Astounding, even though Eric Frank Russell would go on to be one of the well-loved writers in John W. Campbell's Astounding. He actually started publishing before Campbell started editing. The Saga of Pelican West is one that I've never had the opportunity to read before. It's kind of hard to get a hold of. The only place I could get a hold of it was to utilize archive.org and find the February 1937 issue of Astounding Stories as a PDF. And so that's where I read it. Otherwise, it's really hard to find. It very much is. And so I've never had the opportunity to read this story. I've read a lot of other Eric Frank Russell stories, especially everything in the Del Rey Best of Eric Frank Russell. Love that book. Love the stories in it. And Eric Frank Russell was very well known for his imaginative aliens. And this had a big impact on Alan Dean Foster. And I think Saga of Pelican West even had somewhat of an impact on Alan Dean Foster, which I'll explain shortly. Now, I've known the name of this story because I've read about this story, that it was Eric Frank Russell's first published story. But I didn't know anything of what the story was about, what kind of story it was. So the Saga of Pelican West, I thought Pelican West was a place. No, Pelican West turns out to be the name of the hero of the story. And he's a spacefarer and a navigator on a ship. And he contracts a disease which usually kills people. And so to avoid, it's like a virus or something, to avoid other members of the crew catching this, they leave him on the asteroid Ceres. Now, we know Ceres is an airless asteroid. In 1937, lots of people speculated maybe these asteroids actually had atmospheres. So in this story, it has an atmosphere. And he's left on Ceres, but it doesn't, and he starts walking to look for, I don't know, a place to hole up or something, some way to get off or whatever. And he spots a woman being pursued by space pirates. Seems to be a theme this week. So he rescues her from the space pirates, and together they try to find a way off of Ceres. And of course, the rest of the pirates come back to find out what's going on, why their guys are missing. And so Pelican West and the woman get tangled up and have more adventures and have to fight their way out and have to think their way out. And of course, Pelican West is your clever hero. This story is so typical 1930s space opera, with the hero, the damsel in distress who falls in love with the hero, the space pirates who want to get him, and the hero, of course, is super intelligent and super strong and can fight his way through and comes on and in the end comes out on top. Now, the interesting thing, and here this is kind of going to become a hallmark of Eric Frank Russell, is he has a pet. It's not an earthly pet. It comes from one of the other planets. It's kind of like a big snake, like a big boa constrictor, but with a different head. And it acts like a dog, follows him around. It's his pet. The reason I find the pet in this story so interesting is that it reminds me so much of the mini drag in Alan Dean Foster's Pip and Flink stories. And Alan Dean Foster has always admitted a deep admiration for Eric Frank Russell. And so I'm kind of thinking, well, maybe the inspiration for the mini drag came from the Saga of Pelican West. But otherwise, very much like the Jack Vance story that I recently reviewed, Saga of Pelican West is your typical old time space opera with fairly stock characters, fairly stock cliched plot and events, your space pirates, your cargo being heisted, and all the other, and the hero, the damsel in distress, all the other cliche elements of 1930s space opera, they're all here. And so this is not a great story, but it's an enjoyable story if you can handle the simplicity of those old space opera stories and the cardboard characters and cliche plot lines. The people back then reading the science fiction magazines, especially when this was published, 1937. With the Jack Vance Planet of the Black Dust, that was published in 1946, 10 years later. And there was a lot of much better science fiction published ahead of that one. But when Saga of Pelican West was published, it was only starting to become cliche. But from our perspective today, it's a little flat. It's not going to blow anybody away, but it is enjoyable, and it is just a novelette, so it's not super long. And so, have you read the Saga of Pelican West? Leave your comments. I want to hear what you think of this story and of Eric Frank Russell. Happy birthday to Eric Frank Russell. Please like our this video, subscribe to our channel, and come on back for more Eric Frank Russell, because this now is the start of a deep dive into Eric Frank Russell. I'm going to read everything I can get my hands on by Eric Frank Russell in order of publication. That's number one. Second story, 2 months later, was also published in Astounding, The Great Radio Peril. So I'll be here doing them. Come on back.